All right, man. What's number two?
Number two is a cheater, is what number two is.
What? A cheater? Why? All right, welcome back to another Tractor Talk here at Build a Lot Acres. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the heaviest garden tractor ever made.
Stay tuned.
All right, Brett. So there's a lot of heavy garden tractors out there. Let's kind of do a quick summary of sizes, and then we'll get into a few of the top contenders for that top spot. So regular garden tractors typically are going to weigh anywhere from about 5 maybe to 800 pounds. That's going to be a pretty standard size tractor. It's going to have a standard, 44 to 48 inch wheelbase, 23 inch back tires, 16 inch front tires. It's going to be maybe around 6 to 6.5 feet long. That's going to be your standard size garden tractor.
So now, above regular garden tractors, but below super garden tractors, we have what I like to call the step-ups.
Really? The step-ups?
Yes.
Is that the best term we could come up with?
Yes, it is.
All right, let's talk about the step-ups.
And so the step-ups are going to be a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier. They might have slightly bigger tires, slightly bigger engines. They're going to be, I'd say, from 700 to 900 pounds normally.
Yeah, I see where you're going with this. So we're talking like a John Deere 318, a Simplicity Sunstar. They're big garden tractors, but not quite at the level of super garden tractor.
Yeah.
There's quite a few tractors in that kind of area.
Half step.
A lot of the Gravely tractors you could talk about would be in that category. So.
Yeah. Even something like the 448, I would consider to be in that category.
Yeah, the 448 has big tires, but it's not that heavy, and it's kind of lax in a lot of the other super garden tractor areas.
I need the creme de la creme.
All right, now that we're done with the step-ups, let's talk about super garden tractors. Super garden tractors is actually a term that was coined after the Cub Cadet 982 in 1979. That was the very first super garden tractor, and then shortly thereafter you had like the Bolins HT series, you had the John Deere 400, you had all these other brands trying to compete with that new category. So super garden tractors are going to be maybe 900 to 1100 pounds, typically going to have 26 inch rear tires, 18 inch front tires. The wheelbase might be anywhere from 50 to 53 inches, and they're just going to be a big step up from your standard size garden tractor. So we've talked about garden tractors, we've talked about the step-ups.
I like it. I like the term.
We've talked about super garden tractors, but there's 5 models that are even bigger than that. Let's find out what they are. All right, so the top 5 heaviest garden tractors on our list, we're going to do lightest to heaviest.
So the first one we're going to do is a Wheelhorse D250, which comes in at 1,160 pounds. So it's not that much heavier than a standard super garden tractor, but I think what really sets this one apart is the engine, as I'm sure my father can agree with.
Wheelhorse D250 is actually made by a German company called Gutbrot, and it has a French Renault engine that came in at 19.9 horsepower, even though that's not the real horsepower rating. It's really somewhere more in the 30 to 35 horsepower range, but they had to say 19.9 to get it into the United States without a rollover protection system or ROPS. So that 4-cylinder water-cooled Renault engine really, like Brett said, sets it apart. And also the 12-speed transmission is a lot of gear selections for a garden tractor. So number 5 on the list is going to be the Wheelhorse D250.
Number 4 on the list is going to go to a similar in terms of size tractor, and that is going to be the John Deere 430.
So the John Deere 430 is an awesome garden tractor. It has a Yanmar 3-cylinder diesel engine, and it weighs in at 1,170 pounds. So according to Tractor Data anyways, just 10 pounds over the D250 Wheelhorse, so very similar in size, but it has that awesome diesel power plant that has tons of torque, and it's a real awesome machine.
Yeah, I've heard they're very fun tractors.
And another award you could give the John Deere 430 would be the largest hood of any garden tractor. I think the Sunstar has one massive hood, but I think the John Deere 430 might have it beat. It's got a huge hood for that huge power plant. So the next tractor on the list is one we've talked about in several other videos, and we have one of these tractors, and that's going to be
the PowerMax 9020.
This also came in a number of other variants. They had the Alice Chalmers 616, 620, 720. They had the PowerMax 4040, 4041, 9020. They also had the Montgomery Ward's Twin 20. They're all PowerMax tractors. They all have the same frame. The only real difference other than the brand and the decals is some of the older models had a 16.5 horsepower Onan, and the newer models had a massive 19.5 horsepower Onan.
Hence the 16 and then the 20.
But there is one thing to consider with this, and that is going to be it came with 3 tire choices, both front and rear. And that made a big difference in how much it weighed. So if you look at Tractor Data and a lot of other places, I believe even the brochure lists it at 1,300 pounds shipping weight. That is with the standard 8x16 rear tires. If you went up to the 29 by 12.5 rear tires, or the massive high flotation 31 by 15.5 inch tires, that made a real difference in how much it weighed. Supposedly with the largest tires front and rear, which was a lot wider, a lot more rubber, a lot heavier, it went from 1,300 pounds to 1,480 pounds. So depending on which tires you use and how you view it, you could actually move this up a spot, as you're going to see in a minute. But the number 3 tractor on our list is
The 9020 PowerMax.
All right, man. What's number 2?
Number 2 is a cheater, is what number 2 is.
What? A cheater? Why?
Well, because number 2 had a few things that made it not a garden tractor.
Well, first, let's tell them what is number 2.
Number 2 is the Gravely GMT 9000.
Wow.
And so with number 2, there are a few key differences that I think make it not a garden tractor. One of the biggest ones, probably the biggest in my opinion, is it's a category 1, not 0, or 1 3-point hitch.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think this was the only tractor that was classified as a garden tractor with it, correct? If not one of.
It's the only one that I can think of vintage tractors. There are a lot of newer garden tractors that have limited category 1 hitches, meaning has a limited lift height compared to a standard category 1. But yeah, I think it's the only garden tractor I can think of that has a true category 1 3-point hitch.
And then also it had a 4-cylinder water-cooled engine.
Yeah, 4-cylinder Continental engine, which again, most garden tractors are going to have a 2-cylinder or a single-cylinder air-cooled engine. So just like the Wheelhorse D250, it's hard to call this a garden tractor. At least the D250 has smaller tires, has a category 0 3-point hitch, but this Gravely GMT 9000 was one big machine. It weighed in at 1,470 pounds shipping weight. So if you go back a minute and look at the PowerMax we just talked about, with the biggest tires, it weighed in at 1,480 pounds. So which spot do you give number 2 to? In our opinion, because the PowerMaxes often wouldn't come with those bigger high flotation tires, we decided to make that number 3 and make the Gravely GMT 9000 number 2. So the Gravely GMT 9000 was an awesome machine. You can get it with a 72-inch or a 6-foot mid-mount deck, as well as a 50-inch side deck. So I'm pretty sure you could put them both on at the same time, which meant you could have
122 inches of
cut,
cut, which is
one
over
time.
10 feet
So
at a time.
10-foot cutting swath at a time. And then, of course, you get all kinds of other things like loaders and 3-point implements and PTO stuff. So let us know in the comments if you ever heard of a Gravely GMT 9000. Other than that, I believe Gravely's biggest was the 24G, which came in right around 1,000 pounds, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe like 993, I believe, or something like that. So this GMT 9000, I really have a hard time calling a garden tractor, but that's what they advertise it at. So it's number 2 on our list. All right, so before we do number 1, let's do a quick recap of the top 5.
Number 5 was the Wheelhorse D250.
Number 4 was the John Deere 430.
Number 3 was the PowerMax 9020.
Number 2 was the Gravely GMT 9000. And number 1 is...
Bringing home the bacon is the Ingersoll 7020, weighing in at a whopping 1,620 pounds.
Now, if you haven't seen one of these Ingersoll 7020 loader tractors, you're really missing out. This thing looks like a tank. In fact, we did a video on the whole high loader line that we recommend you check out. If you want to see that video, please click somewhere up here. But going back to the 7020, it was Ingersoll's 4-wheel drive version of the high loader. So they had the 644, 646, 648. They had the 6018, the 6020. Those are all two-wheel drive versions of the high loader tractors. And then they had the four-wheel drive 7020, which also came in a later variant with a quick attach bucket, which would be the 7020 QA.
And this tractor is a garden tractor. Unlike the GMT 9000, it's a 2-cylinder air-cooled engine, I believe a Kohler.
And it had a category 0 3-point hitch. And it weighed, as Brett said, 1,620 pounds. However, some may argue it has a loader, and that accounts for a lot of that weight. Without the loader, it doesn't weigh as much as maybe the number 2 or the number 3 tractor, which was probably true. However, the Ingersoll tractors didn't have add-on loaders. These loaders were from the factory, and they weren't designed to be taken off. They were meant to always have loaders on them, so that's why we're going to include it in the weight, and it makes that number 1 spot on this list. If you got the 7020 with a backhoe, so the loader backhoe version, it was over 3,000 pounds. And also, it's worth noting, these tractors were not wimpy like a lot of your typical garden tractor aftermarket loaders are going to be. The 7020 is rated to pick up 938 pounds to full height, which is about 6 feet in the air. So just under 1,000-pound lift capacity, probably more if you were lower to the ground and you had adequate counterweight. And it had 23-inch by 8.5 front tires. So the same front tire size that a lot of your regular size garden tractors are going to have in the rear tire. So just one awesome looking machine. And it's number 1 on our list for the heaviest garden tractor of all time. If you think we said anything wrong, or that we missed a tractor, or that maybe that we didn't consider a certain factor, please leave it in the comments below. And we'll see you
in the next one.